Welcome, golf fans, pursuers of knowledge and the almighty dollar. This is your golf guru bringing you the worldwide technology championship at Mayakoba. This is my top value plays focusing on the large GPP, DFS, DraftKings. So if you guys are putting together your teams as we speak and you're starting to see that you are needing some guys below 7,000, that's where I'm coming in with this show. Of course, I'm going to give you the ownership projections. We're going to talk a little bit about weather, and we're going to do all the analysis so you can also make your own decisions. And with that said, let's do this. Okay, so if you didn't see my preview show, just real quick, I do kind of a comp course comparison. Really also comparable tournaments is probably a better word, specifically for this because we don't have a lot of stroke gain. We have no stroke gain data for the Mayakoba. We don't have it for the Bermuda, Corrales, Puerto Rico, quite a few of these tournaments. Some we do, but it's more to see where they've ranked in these tournaments because they are very similar from a coastal, from a length, even from green types. It's with that said, when we're looking, we'll plug in these courses just to see how they've done there too. Kind of a last checkpoint to tip the balance to say, hey, do I want to put this guy in my lineup or not? Okay, with that said, let's go jump over into Fantasy National. Let's go look at some analysis. And then we'll do ownership projections, weather, and then get you guys out of here. All right. Okay, so jumping over to Fantasy National. And again, if you are new, I highly recommend it. If you are trying to do your own analysis, Fantasy National specifically only focuses on golf. It's got everything you could want. And with that said, this again is focusing on DraftKings. I'm using no filters over here to the left. The only thing I'm doing is pulling up these guys' last 3 tournaments or last 12 rounds. And as I mentioned, I went through all the guys below 7,000 and came up with my top 10 that I'm going to talk about. And what you're looking at here is a mini model, weighted a little heavier on ball striking and putting. The rest of these approach off the tee and fairways gained are all rated around, I think it's like 18%. You've also got here kind of a birdie graph to see how they've done over the last 3 tournaments. Are they getting a lot of birdies or not? And then we are going to need guys, especially because the weather doesn't look bad. There's going to be some scoring, and 20 under is definitely doable, if not more. And then over here, you got recent results that you can quickly look at for the last 5 tournaments or tournament history, and we'll check that as we go through each of these. Okay, so the first guy I land on at 7,000 that I have interest in is Brendan Steele. You can see this mini model's ranking him at 48th out of 132 players. Everything is kind of the yellowish color, which means, not excellent, but, not bad. He's kind of top third of every ranking between all of the rest of the field. And if we look at recent results, of course, he had that T2 at the Zozo, which, is definitely pretty good. He cut at the Shriners, but also had a T7 at Sanderson Farms, which I always coin as the Chicken Open. Then you got the Safeway at a T42, and then he had a cut the first FedEx Cup event. But we look at his history at Mayakoba, it's kind of a mixed bag. I mean, his best showing, at least shown up here, was a T16 back in 2014. He had a T37 and a T41, but outside of a couple missed cuts. If we go jump on Mr. Brendan Steele, we can go look at some more specifics. So you can see putting can be a problem over the life of his career. Not too shabby if it gets a little windy out, so that's good to know. Again, I said past Palm Greens that they will be putting on. The closest that we have out of these three surfaces is Bermuda. And so it's technically his best worst surface, if you want to put it that way. And if we just go quickly and click on where has he done his most damage. So he's had the 2 wins at the Safeway, which, I wouldn't say it's really a comparable course, but not too bad. The Sony is one of the better comparable courses, where he's got a second back in 2020. The Amex, I think, is a really good comparable course. That is a short, I think, par 70. And also, I believe that is Bermuda. I know it's in California. It's a par 72, but it's less than 7,200, and it is Bermuda on the PGA West course. And let's go back. Sorry about that. Clicked on the wrong button. All right. So the Honda, that's Bermuda. That was recently back in March. Again, at the Sony, he's done well. So he's had a 4th, and he's had a 2nd. So that's pretty impressive. And that would be at Wailea, which is Bermuda. It's a par 70, less than 7,200 yards. Also a coastal course. What else could we, real quick, we can look at here? The players, that's Bermuda, par 71, the Amex again. So he kind of shows up at, some of the comparable courses. So again, everything that I know about Brendan Steele's game, I will be plugging him in. Right now, you can see projected ownership is around 5%. Of course, the next guy I land on is Joel Damon. He's had, a recent win. I believe what he won Corrales. I get these island swings sometimes confused, but we'll verify that. Um, but he's had, a T24, T51, a T31. And again, all these guys that I'm talking about, I don't plan on any of them actually winning. I'm hoping that they can get us like a top 25 or better, which would differentiate your lineup and also get you the points that you need to win this thing, or at least make some cash. And if I mentioned his past history here, his best showing was 2 years ago. He had a T6, T20 last year, a T41, a T23, all at the Mayakoba. We'll call it the Mayakoba Classic. And you can see he's got some more brighter greens, which means good thing. He's elite in some of the areas, and then, of course, yellow in some of the others. And let's go click on Joel Damon. So, again, putting can be a problem. If we look, though, his putting over his last 5 rounds, he's gained strokes in the past 3. And if we go look at it, I mentioned Corrales, so he had that win back in March, which was his first win at Corrales Punta Cana. You also got to see here John Deere. Not too bad. It's a TPC smaller course. OHL, which is, of course, what we're talking about. That was the old sponsor forever at Mayakoba. What else we got here that would be a pretty good representation? The Sony at Wailea. We talked about that. Again, Corrales, he had a good showing. Again, Corrales. So he was, coming close to winning there as it was. OHL again. So some of his best performances is either been at Mayakoba or at Corrales. So again, when I think of an island course, I think Joel Damon could do pretty well. And it was pretty windy when he won at Corrales. So, I know it showed that he wasn't that great in the win, but handled himself pretty well there. You got Tom Hoagie, who, of course, came in third last year, was in the final group with Victor Hovland. Before that, didn't show a whole lot there. He had 2 missed cuts and 2 60ths. But Tom's been playing pretty decent golf, as you see. In the Zozo, he had a 17th. T32 in the CJ Cup, both of those are a little better fields than, what we have been seeing. Shriners, you got to go low there. You got that in Vegas. Sanderson Farms miscut, and then the Safeway or the Fortinet T36. You can see elite ball striker, which I think is a key thing here. Approach is elite. Off the tee, I did say that there is trouble you can get in, but these are pretty wide fairways. So you got to hit it pretty far offline to get into that trouble. But fairways gain, not too bad. He's just not getting the distance off the tee. And the putter, like a lot of these guys, you can see out of the 3 so far we talked about. And I'm going to go into a little more putting information on these guys. When we get to, we're going to look at another view. Let's go jump on Tom Hoagie, the Hoagster, and see what he's got for us. So Bermuda, again, the closest surface to Pass Palm is his best worst surface. Take a look at, from a putting perspective, you say 4, we don't know what happened at the Zozo, but I'm guessing if he gained 5 strokes, he was probably pretty neutral with the putter. If we see where he's done his best damage, so Greenbrier, that's the old TPC, old white course. That's a short track. I do believe that is bent. It is par 70, less than 7,200 yards. OHL, so there you go. At that we were talking about at Mayakoba 2 years ago. I actually think that's last year. I think that's incorrect, that date. The Sony, again, Wailea, great comparable course. The Amex, good comparable. RSM, we were looking at Puerto Rico. The Sony again. St. Jude's not bad at TPC Southwind. That's a long time ago, though. Just seeing what else he's had that might be applicable. The Wyndham, short track, Bermuda. RSM again. RSM again. So, again, I like Tom Hoagie here. Again, it's a guy that I'm going to plug in at 6,900. And moving along. So Guido Migliozzi, we're not going to have any of the comparable courses, but he has won twice on the European Tour. Of course, he popped on our screen for the U.S. Open. We had that T4 and then had a Travelers. He had a T13. he missed the cut at the Open, which is kind of crazy, but back over in his land. And then just recently had a T57 at the Bermuda. But you can see out of what stroke gain data we do have, which is minimal, it's been pretty elite. And the guy, of course, at the U.S. Open, what he chipped in, I don't know how many shots. So he's got a good short game. And, like I said, to click on him, I could do that, but we're not going to, there's not a lot of background data. But I think, you can see when on POA, he's gained a stroke. And like I said, we only have 2 tournaments that had stroke gain data. Of course, the Open was across the pond. It was at Royal St. George's. And, but these 2 events, pretty elite. And, the U.S. Open, of course, a very elite field. That was back in the summer, but again, I think for the price, I think he's probably one of the better values, my own perspective. So I'll definitely be plugging him in. Also, I don't mind to use him on a showdown play. Killer Keith Mitchell, I've actually bet him. I think he's 150 to 1. So just note to self, you can see he's kind of come on with the birdies. He had a nice showing at the Northern Trust. We just saw him at the CJ Cup where he had that T3. And, he hasn't had the best success here, but I still think he's a sneaky play. You can see ownership's low. People just don't think of Killer Keith. You always think of a big, long course. But, where he actually won was the Honda. That's not super long, and there's a ton of water around there. So we go click on the Honda. It's Bermuda, par 70. It is a longer track, but it is a par 70. It's just a really tough course with tons of water. So, not saying this course is tough. I'm just saying there is a ton of problems you can get in from a water perspective. But you can see where he's done his damage. Corrales, another island course where he came in second. We look at Arnold Palmer. Both of those are Bermuda. So that was the Northern Trust. I'm trying to remember Liberty National. That's bent. I was just curious what the grass type was for that. At the Sony back in January, he had a 14th at Wailea. RSM, he had a 14th back in 2019. Again, Sony at Wailea, he showed up. The Sony, again, not a bad showing. So anyways, yeah, I like Killer Keith. The guy does, very typically he's going to gain off the tee for you. And if he has decent irons and the putter kicks, he could be very live for you. Garrett Cago, a lot like Guido Migliozoni. We have a little more information on him, but not a ton. But again, for 6,700, again, right, I mentioned in the previous, I was on him for the Bermuda. Now, he didn't do that great when he ended up T34. But, he had both his wins on the Grand Canary Islands, of course, an island course, directly across from Bermuda if you travel about 15 hours. And I like him here. I guess I'm not giving up on Garrett Cago yet. Of course, he won his first tournament. I think it was his second tournament ever playing the PGA Tour. He gains on Bermuda, so he's a pretty good putter. And if we look at the Palmetto, of course, I mentioned that was Bermuda. There was, some wind. It was somewhat similar. Had a lot of that. It was kind of a linksy, I guess, a U.S. link style course. But yeah, I think for the price tag that you're gonna, for his talent level, he could go off. Also, not a terrible showdown play, but I think we were paying $8,000 for him. I think Migliozoni was $9,000. Now I know it's a total different field, but I still think the value is there for those guys. The next guy I've fallen on is Sam Ryder. Yeah, had a good showing at the Zozo. He pops up and then just kind of goes away. But not the best tournament history here. But if we go look at his comparable courses, I think you'll find, so he does gain on Bermuda very slightly, can handle the wind, even though it doesn't look like there's going to be a lot of wind, but it is, it's a coastal-ish course, so at any time that could change. But if we look at, this is what got me interested about Mr. Sam Ryder. So he had a second back at Corrales back in March. John Deere, again, I said it's, somewhat comparable. I think that's bent. Yeah, but it's a par 71, around 7,200 yards. Little tighter track. The Puerto Rico, he had a third. He showed up. Let me scroll down. There's the Honda again. That's where actually he got on my radar again, was back at the Honda, just because it was such a crazy windy conditions. I think he went out on one of those days, and I think he shot the best round of the day. It was low 60s. John Deere again, the Sony back in January of 2020. The Amex also, so put together some decent golf there. There's a Greenbrier again that shows up. Arnold Palmer, and then the Amex. So I'm going to kind of stop there but his best showings have been on some coastal courses and coastal events. So I like Sam Ryder again at 6,500. Probably the guy that I'm most intrigued, and I think could do very well, be Nate Lashley. You know, he does some things that is interesting, and I mentioned him in the preview show. But funny enough, over his last 12 rounds, he's actually the best putter in the field, which you just wouldn't think of that. And he's also at times can be the best guy with the irons, and that's of course how he won the Rocket Mortgage. He's played here twice, had a T38 last year, missed a cut in 2018. Not too worried about that, but he's put together a T16 at Fortinet, the Safeway, Sanderson Farms, a T17. So I've talked about this guy before. I got to watch him live. Maybe that's part, it's him and Doc Redman. And the iron shots that this guy could hit from distances and from close in, is ridiculous. Now, of course, everybody can put together, 4 rounds of red. I think I don't know if he was a Monday qualifier or he was either that or he was like one of the guys that just an alternate in the field. I always get that mixed up with Corey Connors. But you can see gains on Bermuda. It's been, always pretty decent putter. Been really doing well with the putter his last 3 rounds, we'll say. And where he's done some of his best, of course, I mentioned the Rocket Mortgage. That's bent grass. I'm not saying there's any really comparable there, but he had that 4th at Corrales back in September of 2020. I think AT&T Pro-Am, that was recent, this past February. I was on him for that too. Again, it just kind of sets up these shorter courses. He just missed, funny enough, he actually missed some putts to not win that thing. He had an opportunity to win it. He had an 8th at Puerto Rico. So again, Corrales, Puerto Rico, the Amex. Let's see if anything else kind of pops up here. Corrales again a couple times, so he's done really well. So someone else you might want to look at if you remember him for Corrales. But yeah, I've got a bet on Nate Lashley. I think it's 200 to 1 outright to win this thing. Why not? He's coming up 9th in my model, and like I said, I keep an eye on him whenever I see him starting to peek his head up. Hudson Swafford, right? I mean, of course, his only win, I think, is at Corrales. And I might be getting confused. We'll go to that. But you can just see he's been playing pretty decent golf. He had that T17 at the FedEx Cup playoffs for the BMW, a T32 at the CJ Cup, 56 at Shriners. He's played here, at least showing here 5 times. He's made the cut every time and kind of got you that somewhere around the 50th mark. Let's go take a look at Mr. Swafford. I always thought of him as a poor man's Harris English. He looks like Harris English. You can see Bermuda's where, funny enough, over his life, he hasn't putted the best. Poa's where he's gained, but, and you could argue that Poa is also kind of close to Pass Palm. I'd say Pass Palm will be the farthest away from bent. Yeah, so there's his win at Corrales. He's also got a win at the Amex. So I did forget about that one. So it was his second win. I think both of those are very similar courses. Bermuda, short tracks. He had that showed up at the Palmetto recently this past summer. Had a 3rd at Wale at the Sony. Again, he followed up to defend his win. It was a 6 at Corrales. And he's at an 8th at the Sony, a 9th at the Sony. So, you get this guy on a coastal course. He does pretty well. That's Sea Island RSM. That's a while ago. The Sony again. Anyways, I kind of like me some Hudson Swafford. I got a bet on him too. I already mentioned that. I think it's like 250 to 1. So, again, just throwing it out. And the last guy, I've always stated this, Kyle Stanley at 6,300. If you look at his tournament history here at Mayakoba, he's made the cut twice. He popped up here recently with a T35 at the Zozo. You can see the guy, tee to green. I've said this 1,000 times. He's elite. He's super elite. He's just could be the worst putter on tour. But if he's sticking the ball within a few feet, hopefully that would help out and he doesn't have to make so many putts. But you can see on average, loses around 2 strokes to the field. It's really been kind of brutal here recently. Lost 7 strokes at John Deere. But, if he could have just put it neutral, he would have won that tournament. We see where he's had some success, though. So in his day, he did find a putter a couple times. Has a couple wins a while back. St. Jude at TPC South win, but he had that 3rd at Puerto Rico. That had been past February. Well, 2 years ago, we'll just say. Yeah, also at the RSM, another coastal course. If you want to say, I mean, it's Georgia Sea Island, but it's pretty close proximity, similarity. If you want to say that, the Wyndham's a short track. The Sony, there's Mayakoba way back in 2011. So there you go. This didn't pop up, but back in 2011, back maybe as an amateur, he had a 13th at Mayakoba. That's interesting. See, you learn something new every day. Trying to see anything else. So I like Kyle Stanley. I mean, he's a guy that literally, if he just has 4 days of decent or better than decent putting, that guy is going to be top five or could win the tournament. He's that good of a ball striker from tee to green. It's just whatever happens when he gets on the greens, he just cannot putt. Okay, I think that's enough. So to kind of recap for you, the top 10 value plays at 7,000 and below. We've got Brennan Steele, Joel Damon, Tom Hoagie, Guido Miglizzoli, Killer Keith Mitchell, Garrick Higo, Sam Ryder, Nate Lashley, Hudson Swafford, my Harris English doppelganger, and Kyle Stanley, who, if he could just chip everything in, could actually win a tournament if he doesn't have to putt. Okay. Also wanted to give you this look. I showed this in the preview show. I'm going to show it one more time for you guys if you missed that. And also we can look at the guys that we just talked about. So I mentioned this is looking at the last 12 rounds. I'm not picking a type of grass because if I pick paspalum, it's not going to do anything for us. Now, if I pick Bermuda, which I think is the closest type of grass to paspalum, funny enough, Nate Lashley still comes up the first out of all these putting, the putting different distances. Hello. All right, so Brendan Todd, 3-putt avoidance comes up. Again, this is looking at Bermuda. 0 to 5 feet, Adam Long, who's one of my favorite plays, also at the 7,000. So just so you guys know, I already picked him, but he is a $7,000 range player, and I've also bet him. I think he was 150 to 1. 5 to 10 feet, no shocker, Brian Gay. And that's the crucial area. I think 5 to 10, 10 to 15 are the two areas that you want, guys. Justin Rose, that's probably older data. I just feel like because he just hasn't played a ton. But he is a good putter. Sung King, I think, is always not a bad first round leader. You got Brennan Steele, pops up 15 to 20 feet, so that's kind of interesting. And then Tom Hoagie pops up from 20 to 25 feet, and then 25 feet or over. Of course, I already mentioned Mr. Nate Lashley. Scott Stallings could also be an interesting play. I didn't actually end up clicking on him, but of course he had that 62, his best round on the PGA Tour this past Sunday in Bermuda. Maybe that takes where the guy's he can crash the ball off the tee. So might be also someone you want to look at the 7,000 range. And then last but not least, we can go look at the proximities. Again, funny enough, Tom Hoagie over the last 12 rounds. Oh, let me turn off. Oh, it's not pulling Bermuda. Okay. And yeah, there's no reason to pick a grass type for that. So proximity, he is number one at 6,900, one of my picks. You got Joel Damon, Miglizzoli comes up. If you're looking at 200 feet out, you got Kyle Stanley, also one of my guys. Henrik Norlander is a pick of mine. CT Pan I looked at. Danny Lee, who I was on last week. I don't know. I mean, he could definitely be good here. I just feel like that was my shot in the dark, and he couldn't get it done. So I just feel like could be some downside. The proximities that I'm most interested in are actually the 75 to 100. Miglizzoli pops up. This 125 to 150. Tom Hoagie pops up down there a little bit. And then, again, the 150 to 175, Joel Damon and Miglizzoli. Okay, let's go look at... now, I know this is still a little early. I'm doing this show Tuesday afternoon. But I want to get this out. And I don't think ownership projections is going to change a whole lot, at least from what we're getting through Fantasy National. But just to give you guys some ideas of who are the chalky kind of guys. Aaron Wise right now is your super chalk at 30%, which is kind of interesting because paying $9,600 in this field, I'm not saying it's elite, but it's a pretty decent field. And he was, I believe, one of my picks, if I remember correctly. Might be someone that I fade a little bit just because if that blows up. And, this will probably come in somewhere about 2 or 3%, either up or down, just so you know. Victor Hovland, of course, your past champion. Abraham Manser going back to Mexico. Typically, like I've always said, Answer, Ortiz, those guys, when they go back to the homeland, have that little extra oomph. So that's not a shocker. JT, of course, anytime he's in the field, especially in this kind of field, is going to be pretty heavily owned. I think Mito Piera is an interesting. So 8,000, that's a pretty good price for him. Everybody probably sees what I do is that he, again, is an elite ball striker. It's been the putter. So, not too far off from a Kyle Stanley if you want to look literally at their stroke gain data for the last 12 rounds. Maybe not that bad of a putter. Russ Henley, who I like, I just am really shocked that he was always very elite putting on Bermuda, but has been not so good with the putter lately. So hopefully that changes. You got HV3, Seamus, and Jonathan Vegas. I mentioned HV3 and Jonathan Vegas. I think they're both the same price, and that's actually right. I think they're pretty much an identical play, either or. There's my Hudson Swafford coming in at 14%, so some people are also on that. But what I did notice, and I'll just scroll through slightly so you guys can look at these. I'm not going to call out. There's Damon Miglazoli around 12%. If I talked about him or picked him, I'll tell you what their ownership. Brendan Steele's at less than 6% right now. Tom Hoagie, less than 4%, so there's a differentiator. Killer Keith is less than, well, we'll just say around 2% owned, or going to be, is what's estimated. Kyle Stanley, less than 1%. There you go. He pops. But this is the one I'm most, well, that's funny. Nobody is picking Garrick Hago or Sam Ryder. So that's kind of interesting. I mean, again, and then Nate Lashley, where was he at? Maybe it's me. Maybe I'm the only one that's clicked on him. But again, this is out of, just so you guys know, about 700 lineups actually generated is where this data. So again, it could be a little skewed, but it gives you somewhat of an idea. Last but not least, I will talk weather real quick for you. So you're going to want to go to Windfinder. You are going to want to pull up Playa del Carmen. If you've been there, right, this place is like right across the water from Cozumel, not too far at all from Cancun. And not going to worry about that, but let's go look at Thursday. And you can see, I mean, everything that I saw, I mean, there could be a sprinkle shower here or there, but the winds are pretty, nothing to write home about, nothing to worry about. And then if anything, maybe the Saturday, Sunday showing maybe it gets a little gustier. But all in all, I'm showing you this more for if you're playing, check out Windfinder. Of course, if you're doing Showdown, you're going to want to keep an eye on it. Literally golf is one of the sports that you must really watch the weather. And if you've done it long enough, you've learned that the hard way. So anyways, that's where you want to go. That's the closest point to the course that you'll pull up that information. Okay, let's go wrap this thing up. Okay, well, that is it for me for this week for the Worldwide Tech Championship Mayakoba. I hope they get a new sponsor next year because that's just way too much to have to say. Hey, if you like what I'm doing, guys, click that like button, share it with anybody else that you might be thinking about doing DFS golf or might be looking for someone to get a different opinion. And of course, I am still trying to get my subscribe base to 1,000. We are slowly approaching, but of course, it didn't help that literally I got to like 950 subscribers, and then the island swing and kind of the down, football started. And so I know not as many people are definitely playing golf at this point, but if you could do me the honor, if you're checking me out for the first time, you like how I do what I do, click that subscribe button. I typically do 3 shows a week and do a little more on each of the shows when we're in the main season. And if any questions you have about your lineups, hit me up on YouTube comments or on Twitter sphere at DFS Golf Guru. With that said, thanks, guys. Hey, have a great Mayakoba Classic. That's what we're going to call it. Hope you guys get some of those lineups cashed, and I will talk to you guys later.